Supply Chain Management BA 362, Chapter 1. In Chapter 1, we get a brief introduction of what is supply chain management. We introduce a lot of the contents that we're going to be talking about throughout the semester, throughout the time in this textbook, and we just get an introduction to a lot of terminology and history of supply chain. So, what is supply chain? Well, it's the planning and management of all activities involved with getting a product or service from concept to the customer and then supporting the customer. So it involves our suppliers, production, shipping, customer service, marketing, sales, and everything in between. What does it include? Well, coordination and integration across our company. It might involve many organizations depending on what our product or service is, how large our company is, how many suppliers we purchase from, how many people we're looking to sell to. If we use third-party logistics like UPS or FedEx or the US Postal Service, it looks at our products and services, the information about our organization, data about our performance, and financial flows. So, how we make money, how we spend money, how we control costs across our supply chain. The goal of our supply chain is to do better than our competitors, gain our customer loyalty so they keep coming back to us, and do that at the lowest cost possible. So the textbook talks about some of the top supply chain disasters in history and how they impacted different supply chain management strategies, how they impacted these different organizations. And the list of these is in my.Warburg in a PDF. So if you haven't quite received your textbook yet, you can still read the information about these top supply chain disasters. Now, there is also one that includes more current information, such as COVID, supply chain disruptions. At the printing of this textbook, COVID wasn't one of the major supply chain disruptions that it is right now. And so we have these different companies. So, kind of some of these different things. One is General Motors, and how in the 80s they were one of the four front companies to embrace robotic automation in their factories. However, the robotic machines that they purchased weren't quite ready to handle the level of manufacturing they did. So at the time, they spent a lot of money converting all of their factories to robotic automation, thinking that they were on the forefront of all of this new technology. It was really going to help their company. At the time, they also had an opportunity to buy both Toyota and Nissan. They could have purchased them both for the same exact cost of the automation of their factories. And they chose to go with the robots instead. Unfortunately, the robots never really worked. They were an utter and total failure, and General Motors took a huge financial hit because of that. Is just one of the examples here on this page. As I said, you can read about the rest in your chapter or on my.Warburg in the additional reading. Some of the top 10 supply innovations. These are also talked about individually in your textbook, or you can Google them to read about all of them. I'm not going to go through every single one. We're just going to hit on a couple of highlights. One of the highest being the creation of the University Product Code, or the UPC code, the barcode that you see on products. And the technology that allows us to track products as they ship across countries, as they change hands within our inventory system to keep track of when a product comes into our inventory and when it exits our inventory without a lot of manual labor. So that was a huge innovation and disruption in supply chain management because it helped lower our costs, it helped us keep better track of inventory, and it helped us to become more efficient. Okay, let's economic order quantity is another. We're going to see that again in future chapters. What economic order quantity is a mathematical calculation that tells a company how often they should order and when they should order based on a couple of factors. So it tells them what the actual cheapest time to order and save them the most cost. So the things that go into this calculation are how much it costs to store for the company. So what is their warehouse cost, insurance costs, costs with storing product? How long does it take them to get product from their customer or from the shippers? What suppliers? What is the lead time? It's called. If I order it on Tuesday, can I get it by Friday? So that's my lead time. Customer demand. How much of a product is demanded every month or every quarter? And so how much do I want to have in stock at all times to make sure that I don't run out of stock during that lead time? And that I order enough to meet demand, but not so much that I have to pay extra to store that product. So those are the numbers that we get out of the economic order quantity. It tells us how often we should order and how much we should order in each order. Okay? So those are just a couple of the big supply chain innovations. Some of the components of supply chain management, and we're going to talk about these in multiple chapters. So the next two chapters are about customer relationship management and how we work with our customers. Why are customers important in our supply chain? Well, one of the whole purposes of supply chain is getting our products or services into the hands of customers. So that relationship we have with customers and customer satisfaction is very important. Demand management. So what is the demand for our product, and are we making sure that we're meeting that demand? Are we increasing when we have an increased demand or decreasing when we have a decreased demand? Of course, finance, money is always important. Forward logistics is getting our product from us to other locations. So do we use third parties such as UPS or FedEx? Do we need to use ocean shipping? Can we use airline shipping? Are we just getting it across the country so we can use semis? Our IT services, what kind of software that we use to track our inventory for our inventory management, what our website looks like for customer service, our manufacturing operations. Do we lean towards a just-in-time type manufacturing environment? Do we do make to stock manufacturing where we just make so many every month and ship it out? How do we work with our suppliers and our vendors? Our marketing and sales, which then of course ties into demand management. So if we have a marketing push for a product, we can increase the demand for that product. Our order fulfillment and delivery, can we guarantee next day shipping or 2-day shipping? How many on-time orders do we have? How many incorrect orders do we have? How do we measure the metrics of those? Procurement. What do we buy from our suppliers? Which suppliers do we purchase from? How do we control our costs? Product service development and launch, so research and development, looking at how we get new products on the market. Reverse logistics is returns. So, what kind of mechanisms do we have in place for reverse logistics where customers can return items either because it was the wrong item, they don't need it, they're dissatisfied with it, it needs service or other various things. Okay. And then sourcing and supplier relationship collaboration, those all go hand in hand. Where do we get our items from? If we have a relationship with a supplier, does that relationship get us a discount? Does it get us better services? And if not, maybe we'll go to another supplier. So this is a graph of the inputs and outputs for logistics management. So we'll have a couple of chapters where we talk just about logistics management. So logistics is, of course, how we move those things from one place to another. Can we move them across land? Do we need to put them in the air? Where do we have our warehouses? Where do we put our product? And how do we decide that? So there are a lot of different approaches to modeling supply chain management. The first two that the book looks at are the supply chain operations reference model, which is called the SCORE model. This model is currently in version 12, and it has measurements and performance metrics across these 6 things. So planning, sourcing, making, delivering, returning, and enabling. You can Google the SCORE model. The book talks about it briefly, but if you really want to see the document, you can Google the SCORE model and look at the entire list of metrics and measurements that we do across those 6 activities. The Forum model, which comes out of Ohio State University, is a customer relationship management model looking at customer service management. So it's everything for customer service perspective. What's our customer demand? What's our customer order fulfillment? What's our product development to make customers happy? And how do we allow customers to return products? These combine very similar components to such as SWOT analysis, balanced scorecard analysis, KPI, which are key performance indicators that can be things like financial analysis ratios, where we measure what's our inventory turnover look like, what's our current assets ratio look like, etc. Okay. Various societal issues impacting supply chains. And again, where we'll talk about these in different chapters. And we'll go through these a little bit also. We have 2 chapters just on globalization. Okay, so gross domestic product. So in 2016, supply chain logistics accounted for 7.5% of the U.S. gross domestic product, or $1.39 trillion. So logistic costs have decreased as a percentage of GDP since the early 1990s, but they do have an impact on the economy. So we can actually see that right now as we talk about historic inflation rates. You can see in the news that we have historic inflation rates right now. Some of that is driven by the fact that we've had almost 2 years of supply chain and logistic disruptions because of the pandemic. Different global trends. Well, we're a global economy. Our consumers can purchase products from anywhere, any time of the day, and have them shipped. We have a lot of consumer goods purchased in the US that are sourced internationally. Similarly, we export a lot of US goods to other countries. This talks about the largest port in the US, and in 2016 it was the 19th largest in the world. Now, in class on Monday, we Googled this, and it's currently the 17th largest port in the world, so Port Los Angeles, and the amount of traffic that they handle each year. So the TEUs are those 20-foot equivalent units. That is a measurement of the shipping containers. So the number of shipping containers that they get of a variety of products. As we're a global market, we need to understand how things work in a global marketplace. We need to recognize regulations and cultures in a lot of variety. We need to know about import laws, export laws, shipping regulations, um, the kind of paperwork that is involved in moving things from one area to another. We're going to talk about different kind of import and export trends, outsourcing trends, and then a newer trend that's come in, which is called nearshoring, where instead of outsourcing to places like Asia, nearshoring involves looking for the U.S. Looking in Canada and Mexico, or places that can be accessed with a vehicle instead of by ship or air. And we hit that in another chapter. The vertical integration of the supply chain, this is increasing more and more. So vertical integration is where companies purchase their suppliers in order to guarantee that they can always get the supplies that they need. So instead of depending on an outside supplier, we just buy our supplier so we can get the goods and services that we need. And our omnichannel commerce, so omnichannel is all of the channels and all of the ways that a customer can interact with us. So websites, social media, physical stores, and how we serve a customer and manage our products across all of those channels. Sustainability, okay? So organizations, governments, citizens, more concerned with sustainability issues, okay? What energy is available to us? What is the cost of that energy? What are alternate energy sources available to us? Things like Texas, who had an ice storm last February, and their power grid went down for at least a week. So what are alternatives to energy when things like that happen? Do we have generators? What kind of backups do we have? And how do we regulate that? How do we encourage people to look at different sources of energy? Emissions from manufacturing, transportation, logistics, those are always being talked about. You'll hear we're trying to, as a way to reduce carbon footprints, that companies are encouraged to lower the amount of emissions. Many firms adopt environmental standards by themselves. There are also government regulations that say how we can dispose of things, how many emissions we can use, what kind of energy. There might be tax incentives for switching to alternative energy or switching from gas powered vehicles to electric powered vehicles. Sometimes if a government is trying to incentivize a corporation to do that, they will create tax incentives for that. There are a lot of different environmental standards models, such as the ICO 14,000. And we're going to talk about these different supply chain models in future chapters. Infrastructure. So infrastructure, it doesn't always keep up with increases in freight traffic. We saw that last year when the Ever Given was stuck in the Suez Canal. And we found out that as ships are getting bigger and heavier, the Suez Canal is not equipped to handle those kinds of ships. And so maybe the Suez Canal needs to be widened. We can see here on this slide, it talks about how the Panama Canal was expanded to allow larger ships to pass through it. Okay. Infrastructure also talks about bridges and roads. What's the condition of our bridges and roads? And can trains travel easily? Can semis travel easily across those things? Are there places where semis can't travel because the bridges can't handle their weight, for example? Regulatory issues, we talked a little bit about some of the regulatory issues regarding to environmental sustainability. Those regulations are increasing every year. We increase regulations. Um, Regulations on exports and imports, regulations on legal and ethical issues, what can and can't be shipped for different things, trying to prevent financial fraud, which is what the Sarbanes-Oxley Act was looking at, disclosing to shareholders, being transparent with them. And security and risk. We have 5 general categories of risk. Economic risk. Our tax is going to go up. Our import fee is going to go up. Our regulatory fees costs going to go up. Environmental. Is there going to be a derecho? Will a derecho take out our warehouse? Tornadoes, snowstorms, all of those things have impacts on supply chain management. Geopolitical. Um, are the US and China going to get into a tariff war, which then increases import and export fees, or prohibits certain products from going across global areas? And that's just a rough example that I pulled out right now. Societal. So how does society demand change? How does demand change during a pandemic? How does demand change when we're no longer in a pandemic? So risk mitigation strategies are very important. And of course, that cybersecurity is also technological risk. So cybersecurity, last spring, we had that pipeline that was hacked, and there was almost a massive gas shortage because of it. Well, they tried to resolve the fact that they had been hacked and they couldn't get into their accounting or billing systems or keep track of who had gas where or when. Okay. Of course, supply chain disruptions happen all of the time. As we become more dependent, we also have natural disaster disruptions. As we have weather changes, we've had more tornadoes. We just broke a record in December for the number of tornadoes in the state of Iowa, you know, and trying to develop contingency plans. We had a derecho in the state of Iowa that had never occurred before. So how do we develop the plans, insurance, risk management, etc.? We've also had labor strikes as one of the things listed here. So we know that John Deere and Kellogg both went through major labor strikes that lasted for several weeks and caused supply chain disruption. Okay. And then how we prepare for those disasters. And of course, we have natural disasters from weather, pandemics. We're going through that right now. Financial market collapses. The last one was in 2008, caused by banking and housing. Power outages and blackouts, those can happen anytime, any year. And then transportation accidents. As I'm recording this video right now, we're being warned that we're going to get 10 to 11 inches of snow. How many semis trying to deliver products to stores are going to have accidents today and lost products? Okay, and then business related issues impacting supply chain management, of course, customer service and satisfaction, which can drive demand. Human resources, we talked about that a little bit, our ability to staff if we have strikes from our employees, organizational issues, of course, technology impacts as technology changes. We have cyber risks, and then we need to make sure that we're measuring and keeping track of metrics and our costs and doing cost management. Okay, so that is chapter one. Like I said, just a really broad overview of all of the things that we're going to be looking at this semester. Next week, we're going to dive deeper. Chapter 2 and 3 focus on the customer.